How's it going, guys? Kyle here with 4MR Ranch. Super excited, the day has finally come. The Holosun IRIS video is here. The IRIS is here, guys. Like, we've been waiting on this for what, about 2 years? So in a nutshell, why is that exciting? Why is that relevant? For those that are familiar with the world of night vision, it's very expensive. Both the devices that go in front of your eyes to see at night, as well as the supplemental gear like IR illuminators and aiming lasers, some of which, talking the IR illuminators and aiming lasers, can exceed $5,000. That's pretty crazy to most of us to spend that kind of money on a tool like this. Enter Holosun a few years ago, who made some budget-oriented items in this space that's, for the most part, performed pretty well. There was definitely some downfalls, but now their newest and most anticipated iteration is here, which is the IRIS. And they're doing all that for 900 bucks, which is the current street price at the time of this video. 900 bucks, still a lot of money for most people, especially when it's just a supplemental piece of gear. But in the night vision space, that's incredibly good value, assuming it performs. And the whole point of this video is to let you know how well it performs in different categories with quantifiable data. So if you're not familiar with my channel, I'm an engineer for my day job, so I like to lean on data and facts. If you want my opinions, they'll be at the end of the video just to give you my insights from someone who's used this, but otherwise the rest of the video is going to be data points so you can draw your own conclusions on if this is worth your hard-earned money. Now, if you're one of the 4MR Ranch Patreon supporters, you've actually already been getting write-ups. You've been following along as I get data, letting you know how it performs in different categories. So you've been in the loop. So thank you to you guys who are currently supporting the channel. That's my thanks to you. I keep you updated before this video ever sees YouTube. Another round of thank yous that I think are pretty needed and necessary. Warhammer Armaments is the current channel sponsor, making content like this possible. Also, they're going to carry the IRIS. So if you get in on the pre-sale with them and use code 4MR, you're gonna get free shipping, and you're actually also gonna get a Unity Spark IR as part of the thank you for sending business their way. And if you appreciate my content, then you can show the sponsor some love. The other sponsor is actually Optics Planet. So 4MRR, code 4MRR will save you 7% off at a minimum unless they got promotions going. Sometimes it's worth more. I don't get a kickback on that, guys. You just save money, and it lets Optics Planet know that, hey, you know, we appreciate you supporting 4MR Ranch. So keep that in mind, guys. Show the sponsor some love. Holosun did send this my way. They also provided ammo for testing it. Otherwise, no other monetary transactions took place, and they straight up told me, don't hold back, be honest. We can take the constructive criticism. If there's problems with the unit, deficiencies, we can only improve on it if you're honest, right? So good on them for that kind of mentality. And here's the data, unfiltered, how things unveiled as I tested it, guys. Now, the first test I like to do is to pattern where the lasers are relative to each other. For one, it lets me know how well they're aligned, because if they are skewed left to right or up and down, then the further away you go, the more they're gonna drift infinitely off into space, to where you can't really use the daytime laser to then assume that your IR laser is zeroed, right? So that's the whole point of the visible aiming laser, is you can zero it during the day without dealing with the hassle of waiting for it to get dark and using night vision with limited visibility on your targets. The good news is right out of the box, these things were perfectly co-aligned, meaning that the pattern on the piece of paper was equidistant to where the physical offset of the diodes were in the housing. So that's step number one, and Holosun nailed it. This is the third Holosun unit I've played with. 3 for 3, they've all been perfectly co-aligned, so they know what they're doing in this category. Now, the next thing that I do after a round count, and we're kind of skipping around here, but we're just talking about diode alignment here for this topic, is after a round count, I verify that the diodes haven't shifted, because if, let's say, the visible laser drifts or the IR laser drifts, you can't say it's gonna hold zero because you have physical shift of components inside the housing. After 600 rounds of 5.56, the diodes didn't move at all. They're exactly in the same position, perfectly aligned, no issues whatsoever. And some of those firing schedules that I put this thing through were pretty aggressive. We got things very hot. My whole setup was smoking. I had to wear a glove at some point because things got so toasty. So good to go there. That kind of leads us into the next reliability test, which is its ability to maintain zero. So we got things zeroed. I then shoot a control group. And this was done about 25 yards. I am using the visible laser to aim, so keep in mind the level of precision is only what it can be using a laser. So the groups aren't gonna be stupid tight. Keep that in mind. There's gonna be a little bit more human error in this. But we get a baseline zero. I then go about my day, running drills, shooting, getting things hot, seeing if things fall apart or get toasty. At the 500 round count for this particular test, I then shot another pattern. Now, at first it seemed like maybe the group drifted down a little bit. I've now added a red line horizontally on the target. It turns out that my 0 was actually slightly below center. But what matters is that it didn't shift. So from start to finish, I would actually say it was fairly well maintained. That being said, I was concerned initially. I thought maybe it drifted down, so I wanted to confirm that that was really happening. So what I did is I basically aimed here at, basically if you can imagine a crosshair that I've also marked now in red, and I'll overlay on the screen here, just to the right edge of the top circle so that I'd be at the same elevation. And I'd say for the most part, it's maintained within the margin that I can aim with a visible laser at 25 yards. So I call this 0 maintained. So 500 rounds, heavy firing schedule. This thing didn't seem to shift or budge. One last administrative note on that is that I mounted it to 30 inch-pounds. I don't believe Holosun specified in their user manual. So the next metric I do to test reliability or quality of components is a simple tracking test. I mount it to a test bench. I do 30 adjustments in the elevation, 30 adjustments in the windage, and then I do the equal but opposite direction. And what we're looking for here is that the laser starts and ends on the same point. Is that the end all be all? Absolutely not, but it still tells us how consistent and how repeatable the turrets are. Now, while we're talking about the turrets, I do want to say that they are made very well. There's virtually 0 slop in between adjustment points, no play whatsoever. They do have a fairly tactile and pronounced click, and the screws themselves are kind of a happy medium. So they're not so small like a N-gal to where you got to use a specialized screwdriver to adjust, but they're also not so big that it just adds weight and bulk. They're right in the middle, and I actually really do like the turrets on Holosun lasers. So the next thing that I'm sure you're gonna wanna see is going to be the nighttime footage. Real quick, I'm gonna display the outputs that I metered. I do wanna touch base on some of these. So obviously the Vis laser, it's gonna be under 5 because it's a civilian class visible laser. That's a bummer. It'd be nice to have a super strong visible laser. But on the other side of the house, on the IR laser, I love that it had a 0.57 milliwatt IR laser. For those that are thinking that's really, underpowered, it's great. Notice how there's not bloom. In my personal preference, it's anywhere from a 0.5 to a 1.0 milliwatt IR laser is the sweet spot. Anything over that, you start getting more and more bloom. And if you're using something crazy like a 30 milliwatt IR laser, like some units have, if you're using high spec night vision, you shine that on the target, especially at close range with a mostly dark environment where auto gating won't kick in. There's a good chance that you're going to either temporarily damage, if not permanently damage, your high spec tubes. I won't even mess with that stuff with my high spec tubes. It's not worth the risk. Okay, so giving you an orientation with lights. Downrange, we have a 100-yard target right there. This is a 200-yard silhouette. Now all these silhouettes that are on backstops are mounted to a 4x8 black backdrop. So this is 200 where I'm circling with the laser. This is 300. On the left side is going to be 400. And at the very back is 500. And that is going to be about 5 yards left of that strobe. So just showing you the range. Now it is a 93% moon tonight, which means this is actually a conservative test condition. I'm not giving the illuminator any benefit. It's punching through a ton of photonic barriers. I can almost see the range with my naked eye. It is so bright out. There are no clouds whatsoever. I'm gonna go ahead and go straight to high. And here is as wide as it'll go. You can still clearly see it at 100 yards. That silhouette is more than lit up. And if you narrow it, it actually kind of overpowers it to where you'd want to turn your gain down in that spot. So I'm seeing this widened illuminator all the way out. I feel like I kind of see it on the trees at the 500 yard mark. So that strobe is that 500 yard target. But when I narrow it, you can absolutely pick it up. That's the 400 yard target and the 500 yard target. No issues whatsoever. Here's the 300, the 200. This is all 100 yard backstops. And here's the 100 yard silhouette. So if you go super, super wide, it has you covered for most of those ranges. So I am pleasantly surprised that this thing actually gets the output that it does. It looks really, really solid. The only thing worth noting is that aiming laser doesn't look perfectly centered. It's a little easier to see there. You get a little bit more of that pattern below it, is what I'm noticing. But it's not bad. And it seems like it becomes more centered when you're wider. That or you just notice it less. But definitely workable. So this looks pretty decent. Now granted, you don't need a ton of illumination on a night like tonight. So I do want to point out that that laser is super well balanced. There's not a lot of bloom. I could actually aim at this 100-yard target and have pretty good confidence. You can see how nice and precise it is at 400 and again at 500 near that strobe. So pretty solid. Now for comparison, since it is a full moon night, here is their LE321G. So Holosun kind of had a bad rap for their illuminators. Even though they made solid lasers, you can see where people kind of recommended maybe skipping out on these because you barely see anything on that 100-yard target, and there's really no point. It's gonna drop off past 100, and that's because there's so many photonic barriers that this LE321G just cannot punch through, and that is fully narrowed. I just wanted to confirm. Bear with me here. I'm trying to work everything with 2 hands, but not a whole lot. Okay, up next is going to be a comparison to the laser speed. This is the M6TR. This is the one that has the optimized 5 milliwatt IR laser, so it's not, the bloom isn't as bad, but even still, comparing to the Holosun, and I'll try to get them to be roughly the same size. I'm looking at this through a camera screen. To my eye, they look pretty similar in terms of output. This illuminator just has some carbon on it. That's not a dirty illuminator. You wipe the lens off. Apologies, guys, but just showing you, since output is very similar to the M6TR and the Holosun, I just want to point out how much more usable the Holosun laser is, because this metered at about 0.5 milliwatt, where, like I said, this is a 5 milliwatt. So this is where you really don't need much more, guys. So just keep that in mind, because if you're trying to do any practical shooting, so that's the 100-yard target, there's a lot more bloom even at 5. So laser speed on that target. And now here is the Holosun. Try to converge the laser speed. Okay, Holosun is on the left at the 500-yard target, and here's the laser speed, M6TR. So there's definitely an edge there when we're talking about illuminator performance. So the laser speed is obviously brighter when you converge that illuminator more. These trees are probably 550 yards, maybe a little further. Holosun is a lot harder to pick up than that laser speed, but I'm still seeing that illuminator. So here's 400 yards where the Holosun has a little bit more punch. It's starting to drop off compared to the laser speed at that 500-yard mark, but still usable. I'm still seeing it even with the 93% moon tonight. Okay, on the right, we have the AMMJ Penumbra, another VCSEL illuminator. I've done a full review on the channel if you want to see more about it, but compared to the Iris. So Iris on the left, Penumbra on the right. Penumbra on the right, and the Iris on the left. I'd say they look fairly comparable. The Penumbra does have adjustable output on both the illuminator and the laser. So this is the laser on low, illuminator on high. And I'd say the output is fairly matched to the Holosun. Okay, so Iris is on the left, and this isn't gonna be super comparable because the illuminator is totally different, but here is the Rovivon GL4, which has so much flood in the foreground, I can tell I am auto-gating my tubes. So just a quick comparison there, because it's really comparing apples to oranges, but some of you guys are gonna ask for it, so there it is. And here is the M600V, while we are on kind of flood illuminators compared to the Iris. So previously, to run the Holosun lasers successfully, you really needed an M600V to give you illumination, which a lot of people ran successfully, but here is that. Okay, the tried and true D-Ball D2, shining down at that 500 yards compared to the Iris. I'm trying to get those illuminators to be roughly the same size. I'm juggling 3 things with 2 hands. So D-Ball D2 still kind of reigns supreme in terms of output. Get quite a little bit more punch through those that bright moonlight tonight. So here's a comparison at the 100-yard range, just where you can pick it up a little bit more. So definitely more intensity on that D-ball D2, but in terms of form factor, it's not even a close comparison. The fact that the Iris is even keeping up this much against this massive illuminator is pretty impressive. And just to show you, I'll narrow the Iris all the way. So aiming at that 500-yard target compared to the D-ball D2. 400-yard target. So there you go. So here's Holosun on the left, and here is the DIRV on the right. I honestly should probably turn the gain down a little bit, but I want to keep the settings consistent for this video, and we're already in too deep. So 200-yard target with the Holosun compared to that DIRV. So they're both VCSEL illuminators. Differences, you cannot change the pattern of the DIRV, but there is a diffuser that you can make it go into a flood mode. But this one I've never had an issue illuminating to 500 yards, and you can see it's lighting up that tree line just fine, even with the moon, again, compared to the Holosun. Okay, and because you guys are disgusting and you only want one thing, and that is cheap lasers, here is the SMS HF XC. So that is powered down low, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn it up, and I will narrow it. So this is the version 1, where I can't independently control that laser power. Let's see, so Iris is on the left against the SMS, which I will be looking forward to it when we can control that bloom better. So here's the Holosun. So 400-yard comparison right there compared to the SMS. So the illuminator is obviously much stronger, but so is that laser, to where it doesn't make it as usable. Here's the 500. The Holosun narrowed down, and here's the SMS. It pretty much obstructs that whole target. Okay, on the wide end, Holosun IRIS on the left, SMS laser on the right. So again, this is where I'm really happy with the Holosun, because that laser is so much more usable. This is a really good demo of why you don't really want a super strong IR laser, because all that bloom just completely obstructs targets. So if you were trying to shoot at this 200-yard target, you could do it with the IRIS. With the SMS, it's gonna completely obstruct it. So there you have it.
All right, so if you're skipping to this part of the video, this is where I'm getting a little less data driven, and this is just the point of view of someone who plays with these devices fairly regularly. I think this is the 35th different unit I've now tested on the channel. Starting with the weight, because I think it's relevant. This is with a battery, 6.1 ounces. So this thing doesn't really add much perceivable weight or bulk to your to whatever platform you want to throw it on. So that was the first thing I noticed when I pulled this out of the box, is it's freaking tiny. I mean, it fits in the palm of your hand. Way smaller than other relevant options that are currently on the market. So that was a win. The next thing I go to feel in terms of initial impressions is that, the slider has been all the hype, so I felt the slider, and it's pretty tight, it's tactile, and it feels good. We're now at 600 rounds on this unit, and it feels exactly like it did when I got it out of the box. And we got this thing pretty toasty. So obviously I will have to update you guys if things start falling apart or wearing out over time. But in the sake of getting this video out to you as quickly as possible, I'm calling the slider thus far good to go. Now the controls on the back side are simple. It's everything you need, nothing you don't. You have an off position, you have a high and a low on the right side, so you control essentially your output power. And then on the left side, you choose between your visible laser, IR illuminator, or dual. So simple, it works. You do have a firing button on the back center, so it plays nice with you left-handed guys. It is gonna be compatible for ambidextrous use, and the slider is also centered for what that's worth as well.
On the mounting interface, I was pleased to see they didn't try some kind of QD system. I think they got enough complaints on their previous generation that the latches had issues with breaking. They just did a very simple cross-bolt system. That's all you need. If you're a laser manufacturer watching this, please stop with the stupid QD stuff, because it's not always a one-size-fits-all. It doesn't accommodate for all tolerances. They nailed it on this. I think they learned their lesson on issues with levers and seeing other people kind of crash and burn with them too. And on top of it, having that cross-bolt system, it does also have an integrated recoil lug. So reliability-wise, the mount, I think it's a step in the right direction. It's definitely the improvement we needed for their units. So from a use case standpoint, my first impressions when I first looked through it and turned it on, I immediately noticed how the IR laser was not blooming. It looked very crisp, and the illuminator is one of the cleanest I've used today. There's a little bit of artifacts that are outside the perimeter of the illuminator, but in actual real world practical use, I never noticed it once. I didn't. Admittedly, when I took this out for the main night shoot, it was a full moon, so it probably would have been more apparent to me. Would there have been less light pollution? But it didn't bother me. Personal preference there. I know some people get crazy if there's any kind of spill, but I was not concerned about that at all. Didn't even, jog my mind, but I've already seen some comments of people expressing concern. I'm just telling you from my point of view, I wasn't concerned or didn't really notice it at all. I will say the slider, when you're using it for the first time, is awesome. It is super, super quick. Other dial style systems, you have to, kind of adjust that support hand. You can absolutely move the slider while aiming, while transitioning from targets. It is the fastest illuminator divergence or convergence on the market, period. There's nothing that competes with it that I'm currently aware of. Everything else doesn't even come close. So from an ergonomic standpoint, this thing takes the cake. I'd say my only complaint, and this is a nuance, this is me nitpicking, was actually with the Viz override, which I was actually pleasantly surprised this thing even had with the included tape switch, is that even if the unit is off, the Viz override works. Some people may not like that, I can imagine, because if you want it off for a reason. You don't want to drain battery, you don't want a negligent laser discharge. So it would be cool if when it was in the off position, it stayed off. The other side of that is it makes me a little worried about parasitic drain. I swapped batteries too many times in the testing just to give you the highest possible output for the comparison video, and then of course again for the metering, that I haven't had a single battery in here long enough to tell you if it does have parasitic drain, so I'll have to update you guys down the road on that, but I would suspect it may suffer from that a little bit if the Viz override still works in the off position. The other thing that this is my personal nitpick, it would be cool is if the laser was in high power, that the Viz override also went to high power, regardless of the mode, to include off. Whenever you hit the Viz override with the included tape switch, it goes to Viz low. It would be nice if it was in high, it stayed in high. Some of you guys may not care about that. That's again, personal preference, just something I noticed. That's virtually all I can complain about on this unit, and I feel kind of petty making a complaint about that, but nothing is perfect, and that'd be the only thing that I would personally change is those potential concerns there. Now, one last thing with the tape switch is if you actually want to be able to reach the slider, then you can reach the firing button on top. So me personally, I'm probably not going to run the tape switch, so the Viz override is kind of irrelevant. Anyways, I wanted to test it for reliability purposes as part of this video, and after 600 rounds getting things very, very hot, I didn't fry. The included tape switch and the crane port worked for the entire video, so take that for what it is. So I get asked all the time, what's the best laser for different price points, and as of releasing this video, because I'm sure there's going to be other stuff that comes out in the future, for under $1,000, something that you could actually trust for super good reliability, weather sealing, etc. I think I'm going to give the crown to the Holosun IRIS, which I was very hopeful for, admittedly, because of all the weight and the hype. I knew it was either going to be a huge success or one of the biggest industry flops we've ever seen, and in my personal opinion, I think that this is a major success for the price point, and hopefully I've given you enough data to draw your own conclusions on if you think you agree with me or not. So if there's any questions left unanswered, leave them in the comment section below. Again, if you want to support the channel sponsor, Warhammer Armaments, and you want to pick up an IRIS, you can use code 4MR, you'll get free shipping, and you will also get a free Unity Spark IR. With that, guys, I'm gonna stop rambling. Thank you so much for taking the time to stop by. And for my Patreon supporters, again, who've been getting the play-by-play updates on this, thank you so much for making content like this possible as well. Again, Optics Planet, thank you, code 4MRR, save you guys some money. I get nothing, just saves you cash and keeps the channel sponsors supporting the channel for videos like this. So thanks again, guys, and as always, have a good one.